Chapter 1044. You even have the face to say it, but today's Nangongyu made him feel a sense of terror from the bottom of his heart. Nangongyu, what do you mean? Do you really want to have a fallout with the Feng family? Feng Yunjing said so, but he quickly retreated back into the flying boat. After standing next to Elder Chung, and confirming that there were two masters of the nascent soul stage on his side, Feng Yunjing breathed a sigh of relief. No matter how strong Nangongyu was, he couldn't take advantage of it. His tone sounded a little tough. Nangongyu, you better think about it carefully. Is it worth it to go against the Feng family for a woman? Isn't our Feng family good enough for you? In the early stage, we Feng family supported you in many ways for developing Iron Kirin. You took over the Yanjing city, but we Feng family didn't condemn you at all. Now I just want a woman from you, hee. Then you should just give her to me. Why are you so obsessed with her? You can get so many women in this world, and I can even get hundreds of them to you. Nangongyu sighed lightly, released Hushi, took a step forward and slowly said, Feng Yunjing, don't force me to kill you now. I have thought of 100 ways to torture you and the Feng family. If I kill you out of anger now, wouldn't it be too boring? Having said that, the sealed dragon sword appeared in his hand. He launched a sword aura toward the flying boat. The flying boat that was staggered by Hushi was slashed in half like tofu. Many of the people on the flying boat were just martial artists from the Foundation Establishment stage and Meridian stage. They cut in half by the sword aura before they managed to escape. At the same time, the giant cage that locked the little ones was also slashed apart. The little ones felt the cold sword aura brushed past their fur. As the flying boat collapsed, they even fell out while screaming non-stop. Hushi moved almost the moment the cage was slashed open, and she quickly appeared where the little ones fell out, and kept them back into the void. Both Elder Chung and Feng Yunjing were caught off guard. They hurriedly released their flying swords to maintain their figures in the air. Elder Chung furiously said, Nangongyu, what do you want to do? You killed my disciple. I haven't questioned you yet. Now you dare to destroy my flying boat and rob my spiritual pets? You really want to fight the Doctors Association? Nangongyu sneered. Your spiritual pets? You even have the face to say it. Feng Yunjing had a deep fear of Nangongyu in his heart at this time. He even couldn't face him head-on. Hearing this, he immediately approached the elder and said, Nangongyu and Shiyu have a very close friendship, so he must be here to take back Shiyu's spiritual pets. Elder Chung was furious hearing that. He didn't feel the guilt of stealing someone else's spiritual pets at all. Instead, he said righteously, Nangongyu, these little things are things that the Miracle Healer Academy wants. You'd better be smart and let Shiyu summon all her spiritual pets. By the time, the Miracle Healer Academy will naturally benefit her. Otherwise, you know what is the consequence of offending the Miracle Healer Academy. Chapter 1045. Ignorant, you nonsense. Elder Cheng's face turned pale as if his sore spot was being poked. He furiously said, You brat, what are you to talk to me like this? I will kill you right now. As soon as the voice fell, he flew into the air and launched an ice arrow at Bai Hu. He used all his power in this shot. Not to mention a martial artist of the gold core stage. Even a nascent soul stage martial artist might not be able to escape. Bai Hu looked solemn. He was about to defend with a magic weapon. In a blink of an eye, Nangongyu's figure appeared in front of him. He stretched out his slender jade hand gently and easily caught the flying arrow. Elder Cheng's eyes widened suddenly, and he watched the ice arrow launched by him with most of his power turning into dust in Nangongyu's fingers. The ice arrow could even shock the nascent soul stage martial artists. Nangongyu, hasn't he advanced to the nascent soul stage in just a few years? How could it be possible? How could he be so powerful? Elder Cheng swallowed, and he said in a deep voice, Nangongyu, if you really want to protect Shiyu, I can also give you face. As long as Shiyu calls out the little demonic dragon and the little girl, I don't want the other spiritual pets. We each take a step back, what do you think? When Elder Cheng caught a few pets, he discovered that the little magical dragon should have been transformed from a golden flying dragon, and the little girl was the avatar of the nine-tailed silver fox. Both of these were legendary magical beasts that were sought after by countless martial artists. He had to get them no matter how. As for the pink pig and the ugly cow, he had not figured out what species they were, so he didn't care too much about them. Nangongyu smiled lightly, and a thunderball popped out in his palm. Following the movement of his fingers, the thunderball made a crackling sound as it kept thumbing. He fiddled with the thunderball for a while before he shook his head and sighed. People say that people are knife and chopping board. I'm the fish. Fish should of course be more obedient. However, you two are obviously the fish, but why are you still so ignorant? Presumptuous. Elder Chung was finally fully triggered by Nangongyu's arrogant attitude. Nangongyu, don't choose the hard way. We have two nascent soul stage martial artists here. Do you think you stand a chance against the two of us? Who is choosing the hard way? Make a move and you know. What's the point of so much nonsense? Nangongyu sneered, and he rose up and threw the thunderball toward them. Of course, Feng Yunjing and Elder Chung didn't take a mere thunderball seriously. Feng Yunjing cast a magic shield and charged toward the thunderball. Hearing the crashing sound, Feng Yunjing only felt a heartbreaking pain in his hand. Then the magic shield disappeared without a trace before him. Pala. The rumbling thunder struck Feng Yunjing, making him twitch all over. All his hair stood up one by one. His clothes and skin were scorched. His eyes were rolling and trembling. Chapter 1046. Too easy on him at the moment of his death, Elder Chung lowered his magic weapon to hold him, and stuffed a few medicinal pills into his mouth. Feng Yunjing's scorched body twitched, and he finally opened his eyes again. He opened his mouth and said with a hoarse voice, his eyes were full of fear, Why I can't stop his thunderball. Elder Chung also had a solemn expression, and he said bitterly, he must have some powerful magic weapon in his hand. The sword in his hand seems to exude a breath of dragon pressure. It must be a powerful magic weapon. It seems that Nangongyu really wants to kill us. We can only survive by working together. Humph, when I survive, I will definitely let him suffer. Feng Yunjing endured the pain in his body, stood up, gritted his teeth and said, Well, I don't believe he can beat us if we join hands. At this time, Nangongyu had leisurely released the sealed dragon sword, and formed a gesture. The sealed dragon sword made a terrifying dragon chant before flying straight at Elder Chung and Feng Yunjing. As soon as the dragon roar came out, the lower creatures advanced and surrendered. Although Feng Yunjing and Elder Chung were already masters of nascent soul stage, and the sealed dragon sword in Nangongyu's hands was a counterfeit, they still felt frightening hearing this dragon roar, and seeing the oncoming sealed dragon sword. Elder Cheng's hand holding the magic weapon even kept shaking. He somehow felt that Nangongyu's sword was so devastating that he couldn't defend at all. However, apart from defending, he had no other way at all. Nephew Feng, quickly use your strongest defensive magic weapon, otherwise we... Before Elder Cheng finished speaking, he suddenly felt a strong force coming from behind. Then he involuntarily went in the direction of sealed dragon sword. Sealed dragon sword penetrated his chest, but it still flew toward Feng Yunjing without stopping. Elder Cheng opened a pair of bloodshot eyes, and looked back in disbelief. What he saw was Feng Yunjing activating a life-saving inscribed teleportation jade slip, and his crazy red eyes. The last thing that remained in Elder Cheng's ears was Feng Yunjing's vicious laughter. Elder Cheng, you're old and won't survive for a few years, so please block this sword for me. Don't worry, when I escape, I will revenge for you. You just die with peace of mind. Ah! Feng Yunjing. Elder Chung let out an unwilling and heartbreaking scream as he watched Feng Yunjing disappeared in the light. His internal organs and dantian, that had been severely damaged, finally couldn't bear the power of sealed dragon sword, and suddenly exploded. Qing Wuan's figure flickered, avoiding the splashing flesh and bones of Elder Chung. With a wave of her green smoke fan, she obtained all Elder Cheng's magic weapons and storage devices. Qing Wuan took the thing back to Hushi, glanced at the direction where Feng Yunjing disappeared, and couldn't help but say in depression, I didn't expect to let Feng Yunjing run away again. This is too easy for him. Nangongyu retrieved the sealed dragon sword and sneered. It's true that he ran away, but it may not be too easy for him. Hushi raised her eyebrows and asked incurious, when the inscribed teleportation jade slip was activated just now, you seem to have launched a few spiritual power in his direction. What are those for? Chapter 1047. Separation, change the location? Nan Gongyu nodded with a smile, but his face was full of cold, evil intentions. Feng Yunjing is now covered with wounds and blood, so if he falls into the magical beast forest like this, how will he end up? Magical beast forest? Hushi was taken aback for a moment, then she couldn't help laughing. It's not just because Feng Yunjing is covered with wounds, right? And his scorched skin, and he will definitely become the delicious food that magical beasts are vying for. Nan Gongyu lowered his head and kissed her laughing mouth, but his eyes were slightly dull. However, the magical beast forest can't block message transmission. Feng Yunjing may not be able to die. Moreover, once he reports my strength and the news of Elder Cheng's death to the Feng family and the Doctors Association, I'm afraid the Feng family will start to act. Qinglong also stepped forward and said, Master, I want to report to you that there is news from Xianwu and Wuyu that the Feng family seems to have begun to take action in various kingdoms. Especially the edge of the magical beast forest that Iron Kirin, the Feng family's people began to increase. Nan Gongyu's eyes were dim, and he sneered. I'm still afraid that they won't make a move. But he looked down at Hushi. Sheer, the Feng family has started to act. I must go back to preside over the overall situation. You go back with me, En? Hushi was hesitating, but Xiao Li's whisper came from the void. She was taken aback, then she shook her head and said, Nan Gongyu, I have some things to deal with here. I may need to go to Miracle Healer Academy first. What's more, my current status is quite special. Staying by your side will restrict your actions instead. Nan Gongyu's shining eyes suddenly dimmed, and he put his arm around Hushi and said with a slightly aggrieved voice, Sheer, I haven't seen you for a long time. Are you willing to separate from me? Hushi was naturally a little bit reluctant, but the only feeling of parting was dispelled by Nan Gongyu's tone and attitude. She took out a large stack of talisman papers from her arm, handed them to Nan Gongyu's hand, and whispered, These talismans were given to me by a remarkable man in crafting talisman. They contain a voice message talisman, item transfer talisman, and the recording talisman. Even if we are thousands of miles away, it can be delivered, unlike inscribed jade slip that can only convey simple messages. As she said, her face was a little hot, and she lowered her voice. If you miss me, send me a voice message talisman. I will reply to it. If you want to see me or eat my food, I can also send you video recording talisman and item transfer talisman. In short, we won't be not seeing each other for a long time. Nan Gongyu looked down at the girl in his arms. Hushi was always cold and arrogant, but occasionally facing him, she would have the shyness of a little girl. And he really loved Hushi like this. Just thinking that he couldn't be with his loved one, even if he can send a voice message and see a recording talisman, he felt an indescribable depression for not being to hold her in his arms. He couldn't wait to tie her around him so that she couldn't leave even one step. Chapter 1048. Something happened? Nan Gongyu lowered his head and stabilized the soft pink lips. He didn't bother about the presence of Bai Hu and the others and kissed her passionately, sucking the sweet nectar from her mouth. After a long time, Hushi panted and pushed away the man who was almost out of control, and she looked around. When found that Bai Hu and others had already disappeared, she was relieved. But thinking that the scene just now fell into everyone's eyes, she felt so embarrassed that she wanted to peel off the man's face again. Such a shameless rascal. His face must be thicker than the city wall. Nan Gongyu smiled and grabbed the girl's fist to his chest. Then he said hoarsely, As soon as there is danger, activate my avatar inscribed jade slip. No matter what I'm doing, I will come as soon as possible. Do you hear me? Hushi nodded and whispered, So do you. Don't let yourself be in danger. If you need any medicinal pill or magic weapon, tell me. I will deliver them to you. Nan Gongyu squeezed her small jaw with burning eyes. His voice was even more hoarse. Sheer is really empathetic. But if I really miss you, can you send yourself to me? Hushi kicked him away and cursed, Get lost. This guy is really getting more and more arrogant. Nan Gongyu let out a low laugh. After the two spoke for a while, they finally had to say goodbye. Nan Gongyu left Bai Hu and Qingluan, and even Godspeed to Hushi. He just brought Qinglong away. As soon as Nan Gongyu left, The little guys in the void immediately jumped out. Xiaoli stood in front of Hushi with a face full of guilt and said in a sobbing tone, "Miss, did Xiaoli trouble you that you can't follow the handsome brother back?" Hushi rubbed the little girl's head and smiled loudly. "Nothing, I didn't want to meddle the matter between the Feng family and Nan Gongyu. What he wants is to confront the Feng family openly. That's what I'm good at. I like to do things secretly. So even if I go back with him, I will just go back to Yanjing instead of the magical beast forest. We are still on different ways." Xiaoli breathed a sigh of relief. Then she realized her crying face, blushed and wiped her nose. Little Egg jumped to Xiaoli's side and said with concern, "Sister Xiaoli, you just kept crying in the void and you even called brother. What happened?" Xiaoli's tears that had just stopped suddenly seemed to surge again. She grabbed Hushi's sleeve and said, "Miss, can you show me the relic of that Elder Cheng?" Hushi certainly wouldn't refuse, and she quickly took out all of Elder Cheng's things. As soon as Xiaoli saw one of the jade pendants, she immediately rushed over, grabbed the jade pendant, and then couldn't help crying. "Miss, it's this is Brother Wuqi's. Miss, did something happen to Brother Wuqi?" Wu, Hushi's face suddenly became serious. She took the jade pendant and took a closer look, but she didn't see anything special. "Are you sure you didn't recognize the wrong thing?" Xiaoli nodded with tears and said, "I won't. Miss, this jade pendant is not special, but the decoration on the jade pendant is made of my own tail hair. It can confuse people at critical moments. I also bought this jade pendant for Brother Wuqi. Miss, what should I do? Something must have happened to Brother Wu." Chapter 1049, Miracle Healer Academy. Xiaoli's eyes widened immediately. She clutched Hushi's sleeve and asked hopefully, "Miss, is it true? Is Brother Wuqi still alive? Can we really find Brother Wuqi?" Hushi smiled gently, rubbed her little head and said, "And when did I lie to you?" "Yes. Xiaoli, don't cry anymore." The few little ones also ran over and gathered around Xiaoli, eloquently comforting. "With us here, we will definitely be able to help you rescue your brother." Xiaoli felt everyone's sincere concern, and the sadness on her face was gradually replaced by a warm smile. But she still couldn't help worrying. "But miss, where are we going to find brother? Isn't it obvious?" Hushi smiled and said, "The place that Elder Cheng wanted to send you guys to. Wuqi is most likely be there. Where should we find the clue?" The little ones looked at each other. Then their eyes lit up as they said in unison, "Miracle Healer Academy." The Miracle Healer Academy was no stranger to every martial artist in the Miluo continent. It was located at the junction of Tiangang Kingdom and Songming Kingdom, surrounded by mountains and green water, forming a city of its own called Miracle Healer City. Miracle Healer did not belong to any country. No one had jurisdiction over it, and no one dared to. But this was different from the Shura City, which was also under no jurisdiction. The Shura City was an underworld full of criminals, while the Miracle Healer City was a prosperous place where geniuses and high-level doctors gathered. It was also known as the most desirable sacred place in the entire Miluo continent. Compared with Miracle Healer City, Miracle Healer Academy was a paradise that everyone dreamed of entering. However, it was almost impossible for 90% of the physicians and martial artists of the Miluo continent to enter the Miracle Healer Academy. Although Miracle Healer Academy organized an admissions assessment every year, there were few people who could stand out in that abnormally difficult admissions assessment. Even that ratio was less than 1 in 10 million. As an academy completely independent of all families and influences, Miracle Healer Academy had all its codes of conduct very fair and just, and it was respected and admired by everyone. No matter how powerful one was, even the sons and daughters of the president of the Doctors Association, if he wasn't capable, he would never be selected. Moreover, although it was called Miracle Healer Academy, it recruits not only doctors, but also talented martial artists and some individuals with special talents. In short, as long as everyone was recommended, they had the opportunity to enter Miracle Healer Academy. Once they were selected into the Miracle Healer Academy, no matter what kind of background they was originally from, even the lowest peasant could rise to the top. As for the family of the students in Miracle Healer Academy, they could obtain supreme glory. Even more than 90% of the 8th-ranked doctors and Grandmaster pill refiners of the Miluo continent were from the Miracle Healer Academy, including those elders from the Doctors Association. Chapter 1050. Might as well rob? There was a legend in Miracle Healer Academy that every 10 years, a very small number of excellent students would be sent to the Siam continent to study. Once they had outstanding results of learning, and were valued by Siam continent's sects or forces, they could stay in Siam continent exceptionally. Siam continent was a paradise far higher than Miluo continent. For the people of the Miluo continent, there was an out-of-reach existence like a dream. For most martial artists in Miluo continent, there was only one way to enter Siam continent. That was to advance to the soul-splitting stage, accept the Thunder Tribulation, and finally soar to the upper realm. However, was the Thunder Tribulation so easy to pass? Was soul-splitting stage so easy to reach? Was there a single soul-splitting stage martial artist for nearly 1,000 years? However, the Miracle Healer Academy had provided the people of Miluo continent with another way to ascend to the upper realm, that was, to become the well-deserved king of the Miracle Healer Academy. With this opportunity alone, people from Miluo continent rushed to apply for admission to Miracle Healer Academy. Even Hushi, who had always been calm, couldn't help sighing after hearing Qing Yuan, and by whose detailed description of the origin and power of Miracle Healer Academy. They soon came to the Miracle Healer City. But Hushi did not expect that entering the Miracle Healer City actually required a pass. Only doctors above 4th rank and pill refiner above Quasi-Master level could enter and exit Miracle Healer City freely. All others need to pay crystal stone to enter. 100 crystal stones per person per day? Hushi could not help but frown, Baihu even exclaimed, "They might as well rob." Qing Yuan glared at Baihu before explaining to Hushi, because there are too many people who want to apply for Miracle Healer Academy or go to Miracle Healer City for treatment every year. If they don't set such rules and regulations, Miracle Healer City will definitely be overcrowded. Qing Yuan was the new Zhuke, who was mainly responsible for support. Although she was not a high-ranked doctor like the previous Zhuke, she knew more about this aspect. Hushi nodded. As soon as she heard this rule, she even wanted to get a doctor's rank to save money. However, after understanding the promotion of doctor ranks, she realized that this was impossible. Because the first doctor rank assessment could only be awarded to 3rd-ranked doctor at most, then the promotion of each rank had a time limit. She had to at least wait for a year. Although the fee was expensive, it was really nothing for Hushi, who had just won a huge sum of money. Hushi paid the crystal stones for a month for all of them at once. The city guards couldn't help look at them a few more times. After the few people left, the guards were still talking quietly. These people must have come to participate in the assessment of Miracle Healer Academy, right? Otherwise, they won't pay so many crystal stones. TSK, they don't even have a doctor rank, and the youngest one is only at the foundation establishment stage. If they come here to apply for the Miracle Healer Academy's entry assessment, isn't it self-defeating and a waste of crystal stones? Hey, who cares? We only need to have to collect the crystal stones. As soon as Hushi and others entered the door, they felt a strong spiritual power rushing toward them. Gu Lufeng looked at the 4 corners of the city and found that there was a shining light. He couldn't help but sigh. Miracle Healer City is really rich. In such a huge city, there is even a spirit gathering array. No wonder the entrance fee is so expensive. Chapter 1051. Guide. But now Miracle Healer City had set up the spirit gathering array in the whole city. It was conceivable that the crystal stones cost every day was so expensive. No wonder many people were eager for Miracle Healer City and Miracle Healer Academy. As soon as they entered the city, they saw a few boys and girls with plain clothes rush toward them excitedly. Several seniors, "Are you new to Miracle Healer City? You must need a guide, right? I have lived in Miracle Healer City for more than a year, so I'm very proficient in all the news here. Senior, I only need 500 crystal stones a day to take you for a tour in the Miracle Healer City, especially the Miracle Healer Academy. I have acquaintances there, and I promise to let you know the important matters of the entrance examination." The babbled voice kept coming in their ears. These boys and girls just watched Hushi came in with a large amount of crystal stone at the city gate, and they noticed their costumes and cultivation, a few gold core stage, so they must be huge customers. That was why they were particularly eager. Hushi glanced at them, then she looked at a young man with a refreshing face. The clothes on this boy were more worn than the others, and his face was full of tiredness. Hushi would notice him because the spiritual power fluctuations on his body were very soft and pure. Moreover, it was a very pure water attribute spiritual power. He had at least a dual spiritual root qualification. Judging from his spiritual power fluctuations, this person was very suitable to be a doctor. Hushi pointed and said lightly, "It's him." "How could you choose Tongbing? We are much better than him." "Yeah, he has only been here in Miracle Healer City for less than 3 months. How can he be compared to us?" Hushi's choice puzzled them, making them complain unwillingly. However, as soon as Hushi released her aura, they quickly shut up and ran away as if they were shocked. Only the shabby boy stood there nervously with a flushed face. He said after a long while, My name is Tongbing. Thank you, Senior, for choosing me." Next, Tongbing took Hushi and others around the Miracle Healer City. Miracle Healer City covered a large area, even larger than Yangon City and Yinjing City. And at this time, the streets were full of hustle and bustle, but the shops on both sides didn't mean to do business. The staffs and bosses were sitting on their seats, waiting for others to inquire about the price. In this Miracle Healer City, the most were medical halls. Almost 1 out of 10 people on the street was a doctor, which would be unimaginable if it was another city. But what made Hushi feel strange was that although there were many people in Miracle Healer City, they all come and go in a hurry. There was a strong sense of contradiction with this Miracle Healer City. She couldn't help but ask Tongbing, "Are there so many people here every day?" Tongbing shook his head and said, No, it's not. Only this month is special because in a few days it will be the selection and assessment of Miracle Healer Academy. Many people here are here to participate in the assessment. Usually, because of the expensive entrance fees, there are mostly doctors and high-rank martial artists around, and few ordinary people came in. Chapter 1052. Enchantment. He originally thought that these people paid the sky-high entrance fee to take the selection examination of Miracle Healer Academy, but he didn't expect that they didn't even know the selection examination. Qing Wan sighed with emotion. That's no wonder. Every time the Miracle Healer Academy is selected, almost all the martial artists that are expected to be selected from the whole mainland will come to participate in the registration. Son, it would be a coincidence that we were in time. Hushi smiled and did not speak. Tongbing finally couldn't help but ask in a low voice, "Senior, are you not here to participate in the selection?" Hushi shook her head. "No." But after speaking again, she suddenly smiled slightly. "Not for the time being, but maybe it's not a bad thing to participate," she said very lightly in the last sentence, but Tongbing still heard it. This young man, who was elegant and lofty that made him feel a little embarrassed, seemed younger than him. But the self-confidence in the words and the aura of the superior made Tongbing feel that he was too far away from him. Tongbing soon took Hushi and others to the location of Miracle Healer Academy. Even if Hushi was mentally prepared, she couldn't help being stunned when she saw the vast endless buildings of the academy and the fluctuation of spiritual power that was almost visible to the naked eye. Moreover, seeing the roof of the college building and the misty mountain from the outside, one could imagine how wonderland inside that was carved and painted. This Miracle Healer City was very big, but the real city only occupied half of the Miracle Healer City, and the remaining half of the area was entirely owned by the Miracle Healer Academy. Hushi still wanted to go forward. Tongbing quickly stopped her and said with a red face, "Senior, there is a very powerful barrier set up outside the Miracle Healer Academy. If there is no inscribed jade slip, ordinary people can't get in." As he said, he felt embarrassed. He lowered his head and said, "I'm sorry, Senior. I'm useless. Unlike the other guides, they have acquaintances in the school, and they can take you to the outside of the academy. I can't." Tongbing had been very responsible all the way, and the most important thing was that he didn't speak too much along the way. Hushi was still very satisfied with his attitude as she hated strangers babbling in her ears the most. Hearing that, she was not disappointed and angry, but she said in a calm tone, "Enchantment? How powerful is it?" From this point of view, this Miracle Healer Academy was really not an ordinary sects such as Yunlan sect, did not have the financial and material resources to open enchantments anytime and anywhere. The entire Miluo president, and only the 4 major sects, were willing to spend a huge amount of crystal stone to open the mountain guard array at all times. In Miracle Healer City, there was a spirit gathering array in the city, and the entire Miracle Healer Academy had also set up such a powerful enchantment, which clearly showed their wealth. Tongbing showed a look of awe on his face, and he said in a low voice, "So far, no one has broken into the Miracle Healer Academy." Gu Lufeng frowned and interjected, "Is there a way to get that inscribed jade slip?" Tongbing nodded. "As long as the martial artists work in the college, they will get a uniform inscribed jade slips. However, most of these inscribed jade slips can only enter specific places in the academy. Some can only move around outside. Only the teachers and formal students can really enter the academy." Chapter 1053. The easiest way. The Miracle Healer Academy was so big, there must be a lot of servants and students working in it. It was certainly not a problem to bribe someone to borrow the inscribed jade slip for a day. If it didn't work, they could just steal from someone. Tongbing was taken aback, shaking his head like a rattle. Of course not, every inscribed jade slip is engraved with the only spiritual power mark, so only the owner can use it. If you use someone else's inscribed jade slip to enter the academy, you will soon be sensed by the enchantment. You will definitely be punished if you are caught by the academy guards. It seemed that shortcuts really couldn't work. Hushi also just cast her divine sense to test this enchantment, and she found that it was indeed powerful. She stood a little farther and did not feel the presence of the barrier at all. But her divine sense disappeared into the enchantment without a trace. Presumably, with their cultivation, wanting to break through the barrier forcibly was simply impossible. Baihu couldn't help frowning and said, "Master, what should we do now? Should I ask Master to come over? He must have a way." "No need." Hushi shook her head. "No need to trouble Nangongyu. Isn't there the easiest way?" Baihu was taken aback, blurted out and asked, "What is the solution?" But as soon as Baihu asked, he reacted immediately, staring at Hushi with slightly widened eyes. Hushi smiled leisurely with shining phoenix eyes. "It is of course participating in the entrance examination of the Miracle Healer Academy." In fact, Hushi also remembered at this time. In Yangon City, Master Yuehua had mentioned to her about the Miracle Healer Academy and gave her a letter of recommendation. Although the Miracle Healer Academy did not restrict the identity and strength of the martial artists who signed up for the entrance examination, it also needed to verify the identity and origin of the martial artists. Therefore, every martial artist who participated in the entrance examination needed to obtain the recommendation letter of a doctor or high-rank martial artist. Hushi had already forgotten the letter from Master Yuehua, but now it just happened to come in handy. When Baihu and Gu Lufeng heard it, they looked at each other and nodded again and again. Qing Wan smiled even more. "Mister, with your strength, it is definitely easy to pass the assessment." Hushi didn't say anything yet, but Tongbing's eyes widened in shock. "Easy to pass the assessment? Who is this young man? Are they dreaming or talking big?" No matter what Tongbing thought, since Hushi decided to participate in the entrance examination, she didn't hesitate anymore. She quickly asked Gu Lufeng to take Master Yuehua's recommendation letter to help her register for the examination. Then they went to find an inn to settle down first, but there wasn't any available room in the several inns they went to. No way. After all, this is the peak period for the examination of the Miracle Healer Academy. The entire Miracle Healer City was full of martial artists taking the examination, and the inn had long been in short supply. Baihu looked around and pointed to a luxuriously decorated building not far away and said, "This is also an inn, right? Why don't we go there to have a look?" Tongbing hurriedly said nervously, "Then, there is Wangyue Pavilion, it is indeed an inn. But it is also the most expensive place in Miracle Healer City. The fee for a room is 10,000 crystal stones per day. Chapter 1054. Number 1 room. Generally, people who were not from a family of wealthy families, or didn't have a doctor grade above 6th rank which could get a discount, they would not go to Wuxia Pavilion at all. Otherwise, wouldn't they bankrupt for just staying a few days? Unexpectedly, Baihu didn't care when he heard it. Isn't it just 10,000 crystal stones? Let's go. Find a place to stay first. Tong Bing's little heart suddenly twitched, and he hurriedly followed up without saying anything. As soon as he arrived at the Wuxia Pavilion, Baihu couldn't help snapping his fingers. This Wuxia Pavilion was indeed the most expensive restaurant in Miracle Healer City. It was really luxurious. Not to mention the counter and pillars carved out of crystal stone. The manservants of the chapel outside the door were martial artists above the foundation establishment stage. And everyone who enters and exits the Wuxia Pavilion was rich or noble. And many people had the jade pendants of 6th or 7th rank doctors. There were very few ordinary martial artists here. There were occasionally a few martial artists, which turned out to be at the peak of the gold core stage. There were even 1 or 2 nascent soul stage martial artists. If Hushi came in alone, she would probably be driven out by the staff immediately. After all, a martial artist, who looked no more than the foundation establishment stage, and didn't have a doctor rank, wasn't qualified to work for Wuxia Pavilion. Who would believe that she had the money to live? However, Baihu and Qinghuan both had the gold core stage cultivation base, and they both were chosen from the thousands of elites in King of Hell Mansion. Baihu had been with Nan Gongyu for a long time, so he already had the demeanor of a superior cultivator. So seeing them coming in, the shopkeeper didn't dare to neglect, and he hurriedly stepped forward to greet. Do you want to stay in our pavilion? Unfortunately, there is only the number 1 room left. Tong Bing's face twitched, and he leaned close to Hushi and said in a low voice, Senior, the number 1 is the best room in Wuxia Pavilion. The daily price is 20,000 crystal stones. Tong Bing stared at Hushi with a face full of struggle. The subtext was, if you can't afford it, let's run quickly. Hushi smiled slightly without speaking. Baihu had already made a decision indifferently. I want 2 number 1 rooms. We are not sure how many days are we going to stay, so these will be used as advance deposits. The shopkeeper of Wuxia Pavilion saw the storage bag that Baihu had thrown out and peeked into it. When he raised his head again, his face was full of respect and enthusiasm. His face was even wrinkled with a smile. Although Wuxia Pavilion had never lacked martial artists with generous payments, people like them who threw 1,000,000 crystal stones in one goal were really very rare. For residents like this, they either had a huge force or an unfathomable strength, so shopkeepers dared not to offend them. After the check-in procedure was completed, there was a runner who brought them to their rooms. In fact, it was still early at this time, so Hushi planned to go shopping in Miracle Healer City again to learn about prices and various forces here. After all, she might stay in Miracle Healer City for a long time. Therefore, they asked Tong Bing to wait here for a while, then went to the room to get familiar with the environment. However, when Hushi and the others came out, they unexpectedly didn't see Tong Bing in the lobby. Baihu frowned and said, Does this little guy greedy run away with our crystal stones? Qinghuan shook her head and said, Tong Bing looks quite honest. He doesn't seem like such a person. Chapter 1055. Not worth it. Hushi, Baihu and Qinghuan glanced at each other, and they were about to check it out, but the shopkeeper stepped forward and stopped in front of them. Meeting Hushi's gaze, the shopkeeper's gaze flickered, but he lowered his voice and said with sincere concern, Mister, you come from outside, right? Don't blame me for talking too much. I advise you not to offend someone you can't afford to offend for just a lowly person. It's not worth it. Hushi raised his eyebrows without saying anything. Then she walked out of the Wuxia Pavilion, bypassing the shopkeeper. As soon as she stepped out of the door, she heard a loud bang, not far away. A small figure fell on the steps hard and groaned in pain. Both Hushi and Baihu showed surprised expressions. It turned out to be Tong Bing. At this time, his tattered clothes were even stained with mud, his face was bruised, and blood came out from his mouth. He looked really miserable. In front of Tong Bing, a young man in luxury clothes laughed at Tong Bing's miserable appearance. Tong Bing endured the pain, struggling to get up from the steps, but the young man stepped on his chest. Immediately afterward, he stepped on him violently, making Tong Bing's face turn pale for a while. Then he laughed wildly. I have been looking for you for so long, but I didn't expect to meet you here. Why, you want to participate in the selection assessment of the Miracle Healer Academy. Ha ha ha, you are really ignorant. Why don't you look into the mirror? Even you have the delusion of getting into the Miracle Healer Academy? Stop dreaming. As soon as the young man finished speaking, everyone behind him burst into laughter. The people coming and going on the street also stopped and looked at the excitement here. Some sympathized, some disdained, and some hurriedly walked away to avoid getting into trouble when they saw Tong Bing's miserable look. But no one would kindly stand up for Tong Bing, because that young man looked like someone who shouldn't be offended easily. Tong Bing's painful body trembled slightly, but he still gritted his teeth stubbornly. Miracle Healer Academy stipulates that anyone can participate in the assessment as long as they have a recommendation letter. Of course I can too. Ha, recommendation letter? Just your useless master who died last year without a complete corpse? A second-rank doctor's recommendation letter? Don't you feel ashamed to show it? The young man laughed again, and his voice was full of contempt and disdain. Tong Bing pushed away the feet that the young man and said angrily, You're not allowed to say that to my master. My master is not useless. My master is not dead, he just disappeared. Pooey. You dare to resist me. The young man was furious after being pushed away by Tong Bing. He condensed spiritual power on his feet and kicked Tong Bing ruthlessly. Tong Bing spat out a mouthful of blood. His pale face looked even more dreadful. The young man was at the Meridian stage, and Tong Bing was just at the Foundation establishment stage. Tong Bing had no resistance at all. The young man kicked him to the ground again. When he met Tong Bing's resentful eyes, he suddenly became more angry. He pointed at Tong Bing's forehead and sneered. Ha, you dare to glare at me? Who are you dare to glare at me? I will ruin your eyes right now. As he said, the flying sword pierced toward Tong Bing's eye. The onlookers turned their heads unbearably, and did not dare to watch this scene. Chapter 1056. Kowtow and apologized. Clang dash. That was the sound of the flying sword falling to the ground. The expected pain did not come. Tong Bing opened his eyes and saw that the young man in luxury clothes had stepped away from him, staring fiercely at the surrounding crowd. Who fucking dared to disturb my business? Stand out now. Bai Hu walked down the steps of the Wanghua Pavilion step by step, holding his chest with both hands. He said with a half-smile, Your grandpa me. The young man was startled. Bai Hu's face was very strange to him, so he didn't even know who he was. Soon a subordinate stood up and whispered a few words in the young man's ear. The young man quickly showed a clear look on his face. He said with disdain, So it's you guys. You guys are really blind to find this animal to be your guide. Forget it, I'm in a good mood today so I can forgive you guys. Get out of here now. Bai Hu sneered. Who are you to judge which guide we can hire? You dash. You are really tired of living. The young man raised his eyebrows and stared at Bai Hu and the others fiercely. Seeing that Bai Hu's cultivation level was not low, his servant hurriedly stepped forward, raised his chin and sneered. Hee, are you guys new here? I think you still don't know who our young master is, right? Oh, Bai Hu picked his ear and said nonchalantly. Who is your young master? Tell me. Don't be scared to death. The servant smiled at the young man with a flattering face before looking up and said, This is our young master Hu Minghui. Our young master's father is the butler of the Miracle Healer Academy. You guys must be here to participate in the selection examination of the Miracle Healer Academy, right? I can tell you that if you offend our young master, you don't even think about participating in the selection examination of the Miracle Healer Academy. Bai Hu rolled his eyes secretly. Just a butler? With this kind of position, he can only get into the peripheral of the academy. He can't even get into the inner courtyard. They are actually so arrogant. TSK, this is really annoying. Seeing that Bai Hu hadn't spoken for a long time, the young man thought he was afraid. He smiled proudly. Why? Are you afraid now? Based on the fact that you guys don't know anything, I won't make it difficult for you. Just kowtow and apologize to me, otherwise. Baihu seemed to come back to his senses and he slowly said, Oh, kowtow and apologize. The young man thought that Baihu was about to kneel to him. He said smugly, This is just a little lesson for you so that you guys won't get close to that lowly person and don't offend the one you shouldn't. Before he finished speaking, the young man suddenly felt his knees numb. Then he made an ouch sound and knelt down. Baihu touched his chin and smiled with satisfaction. Yes, really obedient. You just kowtowed to apologize right away. Since you are so sensible, I won't trouble you anymore. You can go. There were bursts of pain in his knees. The young man was completely astounded. He only managed to get up from the ground after a long while. His entire face was distorted because of anger. His lips opened and closed tremblingly. He sternly said after a while, What are you doing in a daze? Go and beat him up. Chapter 1057. I don't care, but the highest level of cultivation among these people was only at the meridian stage. How could they be Baihu's opponent? They were all defeated in just a few moves. The servant quickly helped his bruised young master to get up. Then he shouted at Baihu, You're done, you don't even know who you have offended. You just wait and see. After speaking, seeing Baihu looked over with a sneer, he suddenly felt pain in his chest. How could he say more? He quickly left with his young master. Baihu was satisfied beating them up this time. But the onlookers looked at him as if they were looking at a fool. Some martial artists were full of sympathy. Wangyua Pavilion's shopkeeper even sighed and said to Hushi, Mr. Shihei's, you guys are getting into big trouble this time. If you are here to participate in the admission selection of Miracle Healer Academy, I advise you to not participate. Hushi raised her eyebrows and said, Why? The shopkeeper shook his head and said, Butler, who is the father of Hu Minghui, who happens to be responsible for registration and examination room arrangements this time. Butler, who is now in his 80s, and he finally has this son, so he pampers him very much. You hit Hu Minghui this time, he will definitely not let you go easily. If you participate in the selection, he will not only make it difficult for you, but he will also target you. You may not be able to get out of Miracle Healer City by that time. It's better to run away now. Baihu, who had just walked back, curled his lips and said nonchalantly, Che, isn't it just a butler? I don't care. The shopkeeper shook his head and didn't say much when he saw that they didn't know what trouble they were in now. Hushi and others didn't take this matter seriously at all. According to what Qing Wan said, Miracle Healer Academy's reputation had always been fair. They would never bully candidates just because of a butler. At most, the butler would only make things difficult for Hushi using his position. Hushi wouldn't pay attention to this kind of trick at all. Tongbing also got up from the ground at this time. He walked in front of Hushi with flushed eyes and said hoarsely, Sorry, senior, I'm the one who put you into trouble. Hushi didn't say much. She just handed him a bottle of medicinal pills and crystal stones. This is your reward today. Tongbing was taken aback, and he shook his head again and again. You have paid me in the morning, and I am only your tour guide for half a day. I even caused you so much trouble. Baihu frowned and said impatiently, Just take it. Why are you talking so much? Aren't you going to participate in the selection examination of the Miracle Healer Academy? The examination is only 2 days later, so you should go back and take a rest. How do you take the examination like this? After speaking, the few people didn't bother Tongbing and left. They were already familiar with the Miracle Healer City, so they could still walk around by themselves without a guide. Tongbing stood on the spot, holding the crystal stones and medicinal pills in his hands and staring blankly at the direction where Hushi and others left. He only murmured after a while, Thank you. This is the first time in my life I have received goodwill from the outside world. I will certainly repay it if I have the opportunity in the future. 2 days passed in a blink of an eye, and soon it was time for the selection examination of the Miracle Healer Academy. The first day had no test. It was mainly for the formal registration of the martial artists participating in the examination. Chapter 1058. A dumb look. The entire square occupied a very large area. But now it was still full of people who came to register. By who couldn't help being surprised. Although I knew that the people who participated in the examination of the Miracle Healer Academy every year are young boys and girls with excellent talents, I didn't expect that there would be so many. The admission requirement of the Miracle Healer Academy was that the age must be under 30. This was because martial artists under 30 had many potentials and talents that could be tapped and shaped. In the Miluo continent, a world where most people cultivated, the average age of martial artists was more than 70 or 80 years old. It was conceivable that 30 years old was still a youthful age. However, the boys and girls who had come to apply for Miracle Healer Academy looked only 20 years old, but most of them had reached the Meridian stage. Some had even reached the Gold Core stage early stage. According to Little Egg's investigation results, among them, there were only about 4 people with dual spiritual roots, which was enough to see how talented these people were. The way to register for the entrance exam was very simple. As long as the person had a recommendation letter and his spiritual root had been verified in the small room on the left side, the registration was considered successful. Hushi bid farewell to Bai Hu and others. Then she walked directly to the small room, waiting in line to receive the inscribed jade slip. The long line was full of men and women. Many people couldn't help but cast their eyes on Hushi. Among these martial artists who participated in the assessment, there were also very few at the foundation establishment stage. However, it was really rare for the foundation establishment stage martial artists to look good like Hushi. Although most people still cast contemptuous glances at her, there were also many young girls being moved by her outstanding face. Look, that young man looks really handsome. Even the most beautiful man, Mr. Jiang, in our Linhua city can't be compared with him. What's the use of handsome? He is just at the foundation establishment stage. He actually dares to come to receive the inscribed jade slip. Does he really think he can win? He is probably inexperienced who wants to open his eyes. Open his eyes? Is he stupid? Miracle Healer Academy's assessment is very dangerous. Isn't he afraid of dying here? Hushi naturally heard these people's comments, but she had long been used to it, so she would take these words to her heart. Suddenly, she felt a scrutinizing gaze on her body, which made her slightly stunned. When she looked back, she saw a young man was looking at her from a distance of 3 people. The man seemed to be in his early 20s, but he had a baby face and 2 deep dimples when he laughed. The pair of eyes seemed to be half open, which exuded a mysterious and unfathomable vibe. What surprised Hushi was that this man's cultivation level had actually reached the Gold Core stage intermediate stage. Among all the martial artists who came to the assessment, he was considered to be the top. Seeing Hushi looking over, the man couldn't help but smile at her. In a moment, the original mysterious vibe disappeared. He showed a dumb look. Hushi twitched her mouth and turned her head. Chapter 1059. Bend the law for personal gain. Hushi frowned and got rid of his palm without doing any obvious move. The man looked at his empty palm with surprise. Then his eyes flashed as if he didn't sense Hushi's rejection at all. He smiled and said, "Our meeting is a fate, don't be so aloof. I'm Wei Qingyuan. May I know your name, brother?" Hushi said indifferently. Compared believing that our meeting is a fate, I rather believe that only someone with ill intention will show kindness for no reason. After speaking, before waiting for Wei Qingyuan to react, she turned around and ignored him. Wei Qingyuan was first startled after hitting a wall, but he wasn't annoyed as he just smiled. TSK, interesting. The more this little guy doesn't care about me, the more I want to provoke him. The queue was moving forward bit by bit. It was mainly to verify the identity information and recommendation letters of the applicants, so it took a little time. Suddenly, an angry voice came from the front of the queue. I also have a letter of recommendation. Why don't you let me sign up?" This sound was familiar. Hushi looked up and saw Tongbing's figure as expected. He was arguing with the people at the registration post, but he was ruthlessly kicked to the ground. The people who originally lined up behind Tongbing burst into commotion and scattered like scared birds. Because the crowd dispersed, Hushi, who was already close to the registration post, naturally stood in the front row. She just happened to see Tongbing's bruised nose and swollen face with tears. Hushi put her arms around her chest. Then she saw a middle-aged man walking out of the registration post, exuding strong spirit pressure. His cultivation base had at least the early stage of the gold core stage, and he looked familiar. Behind this middle-aged man, there was also an arrogant teenager who Hushi recognized at a glance. It was Hu Minghui who bullied Tongbing at the entrance of Wangyue Pavilion that day. The bruise on Hu Minghui's face still didn't recover. At this time, his face was full of pride and arrogance, and with a vicious resentment. He looked at Tongbing condescendingly and said, "I said earlier you're not eligible to apply for the Miracle Healer Academy at all. If you are smart, go back now." Butler Hu glared at his son, and said to Tongbing with a majestic expression, "We have already said that you are not eligible to apply for Miracle Healer Academy, but you still want to cause trouble. We can only teach you a lesson." Tongbing gritted his teeth and said, "Why am I not eligible to apply for Miracle Healer Academy? You don't have a recommendation letter." Hu Minghui sneered. "Miracle Healer Academy has regulations that you must have a doctor's recommendation letter before you can apply. So, how can you register?" "You bullshit. I obviously gave the recommendation letter. You must have used your power to avenge your personal grievance and destroyed my recommendation letter. Miracle Healer Academy's assessment is obviously the most fair and strict. How can you behave like this?" Tongbing's remarks were extremely serious, attracting the eyes of all the candidates. They all pointed at Hu Minghui and his father. Butler Hu said with a solemn face, "Miracle Healer Academy has regulations that people who make trouble can be dealt with any means. Even if a person is killed, it is not our responsibility. I wanted to let you go just because you are young and ignorant, but you actually step on my face. Don't blame me for being rude." Chapter 1060 Seek Justice A-. The crowd didn't expect Butler Hu to attack suddenly. The thunderball was about to envelop Tongbing. He had no way to resist with his cultivation. But suddenly, an ice wall appeared in front of Tongbing, completely blocking the thunderball. After the crackling sound, the ice wall shattered, but the thunderball disappeared without a trace. Hu Minghui was still delighted to see the person who displeased him was about to be killed by his father, but someone disrupted it. He said furiously, Who dares to obstruct the Academy's affairs? Do you still want to participate in the assessment?" In the crowd, a beautiful young man walked out slowly. His eyebrows were picturesque, his skin was like snow, and the slender figure looked like a work of art carved from ice jade in the sun. It was enchanting by just taking a look. The young man's cultivation was obviously only at the foundation establishment stage, but under the gaze of Hu Minghui and Butler Hu, he seemed to be completely fearless. He said faintly, "When does seeking justice for himself become causing troubles? You even dare to threaten the candidates not being able to participate in the assessment? Is Miracle Healer Academy run by your Hu family?" As soon as this remark came out, everyone present cast contemptuous glances at Hu Minghui and his father. After all, Hu Minghui and Butler, who were just two servants of the outer courtyard of Miracle Healer Academy. The people who signed up for the assessment on the spot were the talented children of various families. They were all pampered in their families. When did their future be in the hands of only two servants? Wasn't this funny? Butler Hu's face changed slightly, and he glared at his nonsense son. Then he calmed down and said, "This mister, you can't simply talk nonsense. I just act according to the rules of the Academy. How can it be considered a threat? This student does not have a letter of recommendation. How can we break the rule for him?" Before Hushi had time to speak, Hu Minghui suddenly said angrily, "I know you and the others helped the bastard back at the Wangyue Pavilion." With that, he said hatefully toward Butler Hu, "Father, they beat me seriously a few days ago. You must seek justice for me." Butler Hu's face was cold when he heard the words. He really wanted to split his brain to see if his brain was made of tofu. If Hu Minghui didn't mention, he could still use his power to say that there was a problem with his recommendation letter. Now that he shouted out loud in the public, if he still dared to play trick, wouldn't it prove his crime of using his authority on personal grievances? Butler Hu took a deep breath, smiled at Hushi and said without a smile, Mister, you are just at the foundation establishment stage, but your temper is really something. However, Mr. may not be aware of Miracle Healer Academy's assessment. Although there is no threshold for the level of cultivation, people with poor strength entering the final assessment field will not just suffer some minor external injuries. You and student Tongbing student should come again next time. Hashi raised her eyebrows and sneered. Butler Hu, as the butler of Miracle Healer Academy's outer courtyard, you really have huge power. Why? Does Miracle Healer Academy have regulations saying that the foundation establishment stage cannot register? Chapter 1061. Recommendation letter. Then he sneered and said, since you insist, do as you please. But in any case, this Tongbing does not have a letter of recommendation. He definitely can't participate in this assessment. You nonsense. I obviously have a recommendation letter. Tongbing looked at Hashi with tears, and he said in a trembling voice, Mister, I really have a recommendation letter. I handed it to Butler Hu. They are slandering me. Hashi frowned. Before she could speak, a smile came from the man beside her. Recommendation letter is just a formality. It is easy to get. Don't cry, young man, brother can give you one. As soon as the man said this, all eyes immediately fell on him. By hearing the teasing tone, Hashi knew that it was Wei Chengyuan who just talked to her. Seeing Hashi looking over, Wei Chengyuan blinked at her like he was her acquaintance, making Hashi twitch his mouth. Wei Chengyuan took 2 steps forward and threw out a piece of paper. Here, this is the recommendation letter. Just fill in your name on it by yourself. Let Butler Hu verify this letter. This time, he can't really say that you don't have a recommendation letter, right? Tongbing took the recommendation letter in a daze. He glanced at it, then his eyes suddenly widened in horror. He kept looking up at Wei Chengyuan, then looked down at the recommendation letter in his hand. His body trembled slightly. Butler Hu looked at Wei Chengyuan with surprise and uncertainty on his face. This man looked very strange, but his manner showed like he was someone important. More importantly, Butler Hu couldn't see through this person's cultivation level. Tongbing tremblingly wrote his name on the recommendation letter. Then he handed it to Butler Hu. Hu Minghui's angry eyes burst into flames, and he wished he could tear Tongbing apart now. Seeing him handing over the recommendation letter, he immediately rushed over and grabbed it in his hand. He sneered, Humph. You really think the doctor's recommendation letter is so easy to get? I want to see if it's authentic. Suddenly, his voice stopped abruptly, his eyes almost popped out. Seeing that his son's expression, Butler Hu hurriedly took the recommendation letter in shock. 9th rank doctor. This is the recommendation letter of the 9th rank doctor, Master Mo Xingqian. How is this possible? Wei Chengyuan put his arms around his chest and chuckled softly. What? Miracle Healer Academy has regulations that we can't take the recommendation letter of the 9th rank doctor to participate in the entrance examination? No dash. No. No. Butler Hu shook his head quickly and nodded toward Wei Chengyuan. I didn't expect you to be a disciple of Master Mo. Sorry for being disrespectful. Wei Chengyuan smiled and looked at Butler Hu quietly. Butler Hu didn't dare to say more. He hurried back to take the inscribed jade slip and handed it to Tongbing, Hashi and Wei Chengyuan. The farce was over completely, but everyone looked at Wei Chengyuan with suspicion. This time, there was no shortage of disciples and children of the major families in sect, but no one recognized this Wei Chengyuan. Chapter 1062. Ignore. After receiving help, Butler Hu glared at him with regret. Then he sneered. Why are you in a hurry? Let's not talk about whether they can participate in the first test with their spiritual root qualifications. Even if they pass this test, with just the cultivation of the foundation establishment stage, aren't they just looking for death? Hu Minghui was taken aback, then he was a little excited. Father, do you mean to do tricks in the assessment? Is that necessary? The assessment is originally a competition between the weak and the strong. Even if we don't do anything, they will just be bullied by others. Isn't that better? When Hu Minghui heard the words, the gloom on his face disappeared. He said excitedly, Father is really smart. Now I'm still afraid that Tong Bing will not be able to participate in the assessment. When he enters the assessment, without the help of those gold core stage friends, let's see what can he do. Hushi was playing with the inscribed jade slip at hand. This inscribed jade slip was now just a blank inscribed jade slip with the ranking order, but as the assessment progresses, all the information will be recorded in it. After passing the spiritual root inspection, the student's information would be recorded in the inscribed jade slip. After recording, the information in it could no longer be changed. In the end, 60% of the students' scores were judged based on the information recorded in this inscribed jade slip. Hushi was planning to perform spiritual root verification. Then Wei Chengyuan and Tong Bing followed suit. Wei Chengyuan wanted to put his arm around Hushi's shoulder like a buddy, then he said, "Hey little brother, why do you ignore me after receiving my help? I just helped your friend. Can't you say a thank you?" "Aya, it's fine if you don't thank me, but at least tell me your name." Hushi squinted and glared at Wei Chengyuan's hand. Wei Chengyuan's action became stiff. He coughed twice and obediently retracted his hand. Tong Bing, who was following Wei Chengyuan, blushed and whispered, No, I'm not Senior's friend, no. I'm not worthy to be a Senior's friend. I was just hired by Senior as his guide 2 days ago. When Hu Minghui attacked me, it was Senior who saved me." Seeing that he was about to cry, Hushi's eyes trembled. She couldn't help shaking her head before taking out a bottle of medicinal pills and giving it to him. "How are your injuries?" This 17-years-old boy looked so immature, making her think of Xiao Qi, so she naturally showed him a little more care. Tong Bing was grateful. He took the medicinal pills with a shaking hand, and he kept saying thank you. Only when he poured out medicinal pills to swallow, Wei Chengyuan suddenly reached out, snatched the bottle from his hand, put it on the tip of his nose and smelled it. The next moment he yelled, "Damn, the best meridian cleansing pill. You just a bottle to him? Brother, how can you be so generous? I can only buy 3 after queuing up at the Qingxia sect shop for half a month." Tong Bing's face was flushed. He didn't whether he should swallow the medicinal pills. Chapter 1063. Past the inspection before Hushi received it, Wei Chengyuan had already kept the medicine bottle away shamelessly and said with a smile, "Since you guys don't want this best quality pills, then give them to me. I'm welcome to take them." Hushi glared at him and didn't bother him. At this moment, it was Hushi's turn to inspect the spiritual root, so she hurriedly walked into the hut. Testing the spiritual root was only the first step in the assessment of Miracle Healer Academy. It was just a widespread screening process. Hushi originally thought that Miracle Healer Academy would not take it seriously, but when she walked into the cabin and saw an old man with a gray beard sitting on the side, she couldn't help but be surprised. This old man turned out to be at the nascent soul stage, and it was even the intermediate stage. The aura around him was neat, and his clothes were normal. If Hushi didn't have little egg, she wouldn't be able to see the old man's true cultivation. When the old man saw Hushi, he looked at her from her toes to her head. Then he pointed to the side and said, "Go in for the test." The old man pointed to a very small array, which could only accommodate 3 to 5 people standing. The rune of this formation was very peculiar. Even though Hushi had some understanding of arrays, she still couldn't understand it at all. What surprised Hushi was that the energy crystal stone placed in every corner of the formation was the extremely rare 6th grade crystal stones. Is this Miracle Healer Academy too rich? Or is this spiritual root verification very important to Miracle Healer Academy? Logically, Miracle Healer Academy is different from the normal clans and big families. There are various martial artists who cultivate different techniques, so the spiritual root qualification shouldn't be the most important for them. Why is it necessary to do such a test? Could it be that this array could identify some secrets that martial artists can't see through? At this moment, Hushi finally felt a sense of tension in her heart. She had too many secrets in her body like the Sumeru Void Ring and Little Egg. Various thoughts flashed in her mind, but Hushi's face did not show any emotion. She quickly entered the array. Under the cover of Little Egg, the 2 spiritual powers of water and fire in her body were running. Soon pure blue and red light appeared on the array. The old man glanced at her in surprise. and his eyes turned a little solemn. He said solemnly, "The dual spiritual roots of fire and water. You have passed the verification." Hushi breathed a sigh of relief. Just as she was about to leave, she heard the old man sigh in a low voice. "Such a good qualification. You are just too eager for quick success and short gains. If you come here in a few years, you will at least have some self-protection in the assessment." Hushi paused slightly, then she walked out of the hut with a smile. Wei Qingyuan and Tongbing tested their spiritual roots after Hushi. All three of them finished the test and waited for the results of the assessment. Wei Qingyuan held a weed in his mouth and asked Hushi with a grin, "Hey brother, how is your result? Let me tell you, I have the dual mutated sky spiritual root of wind and thunder. You don't have to be worried because you have me protecting you in the academy." Tongbing covered his mouth and exclaimed. He looked at Wei Qingyuan with admiration. "Brother Wei, you are so amazing. You actually have dual sky spiritual root. This is really 1 in a million. Chapter 1064. Really interesting. Hushi was so annoyed by this guy until she heard the discussion from a few martial artists not far away. "Hey, haven't you heard that the girl who just entered, her spiritual root test result is the dual sky spiritual root of gold and earth? This is the sky spiritual root of pure 5 elements. It hasn't appeared in the assessment of Miracle Healer Academy for many years. I know that girl. She is the eldest lady of Shueyu sect. I heard that she is only 19 years old this year, but she has already broken through the gold core stage. Her talent is even close to Feng Lianying. I remember Feng Lianying also has the dual sky spiritual root of water and fire, right? Pui, Feng Lianying, that shameless woman, did such a shameful thing. The entire Miluo continent has known about it. How can she be compared with the miss of the Shueyu sect? That's right, such a disgusting woman. She is lucky for not being expelled from academy. What's more, I heard that her so-called sky spiritual root of the 5 elements is actually changed forcibly by her master's medicine. It can't be compared with the real dual sky spiritual root of the 5 elements. Hehe, see that woman wearing Feng family costumes over there? It is Feng Yinqing. I heard that Feng family sent her to the Miracle Healer Academy to replace Feng Lianying. Otherwise, if the Feng family doesn't have a place in the Miracle Healer Academy, the family will just suffer in Miluo continent. Really? Someone couldn't help but exclaimed. Miracle Healer Academy is just an academy after all. Do these major families still have to give face to the academy? You don't even know this? Miracle Healer City and Miracle Healer Academy have the most scared status in Miluo continent. Let alone these family sects. Even the Doctors Association dare not say that they have a say in Miracle Healer Academy. The strength of Miracle Healer Academy made those who signed up even more excited. As long as they could pass the assessment and enter the academy, their classmates all had huge family backgrounds and strength. They couldn't help but yearn for it. When Wei Qingyuan saw Hushi listening to other people's discussions in a daze, he couldn't help but approach her with a smile. As far as I know, there isn't a single martial artist of the foundation establishment stage being admitted to the Miracle Healer Academy in hundreds of years. Although I hope to see you two in the academy, the chances of you two passing the assessment are unlikely to be great. Tongbing immediately said dejectedly. He said in a low voice, "My spiritual root test result is the dual spiritual root of wind and water, and my spiritual root is also a little impure. Maybe I can't even pass the first assessment. It would be nice if I have the talent like you, Brother Wei." Wei Qingyuan smiled and did not speak, but his deep gaze stared at Hushi imperceptibly. Hushi hadn't spoken yet, then there was a clamor in the distance. The results of the first round of screening have been announced. As soon as this word came out, everyone swarmed in the direction where the sound came from. Just after Hushi took one step, she stopped, turned around and said faintly, "There hasn't been one in hundreds of years? But soon you will see one." Wei Qingyuan was taken aback. When he realized what Hushi's words meant, he burst into laughter. His eyes were full of interest. Interesting. Really interesting. I want to see why he is so confident. Chapter 1065. Cheating. Before the three of them walked into the bulletin board, they heard a wailing sound from the crowd. How come? So many people signed up, and in the end less than 100 people were admitted. This is only the first round. Isn't it too harsh? I'm a single mutated spiritual root of Earth. How could I be screened out? Che, the first round of screening does not only look at spiritual root qualifications, but also your muscles, bones, cultivation, and potential. No matter how good your qualifications are, if your cultivation base is not enough and your potential is too bad, of course you will be screened out. I heard that last year's assessment, only 8 people were admitted at the end. There were nearly 1,000 people who applied for the assessment at that time. How many of these 96 people will be able to stay in the end? When the trio squeezed into the crowd and glanced, not surprisingly, Hashi saw her name, Shiyu, at the end of the list. Wei Qingyuan's name was 6th from the top. As soon as he saw it, he bit the weed and smiled. I actually only ranked 6th in the spiritual root qualification test. TSK, who is in front of me? Suddenly someone exclaimed. How come there are people of the foundation establishment stage on the list? That's right. Didn't it mean that it's not just about the assessment of spiritual root? If you count the cultivation base, how can the people of the foundation establishment stage be on the list? I remember that there hasn't been a foundation establishment stage martial artist in the first round of screening for decades, right? Is this person a relative of the Academy Master? Is he cheating? The crowd suddenly burst commotion, especially many people who failed were filled with outrage. They wanted an explanation from the Academy. Because there was too much noise, a boy in green clothes slowly walked out of the hut, glanced around with a fierce gaze and said coldly, Shiyu, dual sky spiritual root of water and fire. His bone and meridians are 17 years old. The peak of the foundation establishment stage. Her selection is beyond doubt. If you have any objections, I don't mind reporting it to the upper level of the Academy. The boy in green clothes paused and continued. Since you are so dissatisfied with the Academy's verdict, then you should not participate in the Academy's assessment anymore. As soon as this remark came out, the audience fell into a weird silence. No one dared to say more. Seeing that there was no objection, the boy in green clothes said indifferently, all the candidates who fail the screening, please return your inscribed jade slip into the spiritual root inspection hut. We will register your information. If you want to participate again in the assessment next year, you don't need to provide a recommendation letter. After speaking, the boy in green clothes just walked into the hut. After the crowd was silent for a while, someone suddenly murmured to break the calm. Shiyu. Shiyu? Why is this name so familiar? Could it be the young master of the Shengda Hall? Shengda Hall? Is the Shengda Hall that sells the best quality pills? If it is him, then it's no wonder he can be so powerful. I heard that some of the best quality pills sold by Shengda Hall can increase one's cultivation in a short period of time, and even improve their aptitude. He must have taken those medicinal pills. That's why he is so powerful, right? So what if he took the medicinal pills? With the foundation establishment stage, he will definitely die miserably when he enters the second or third rounds of assessment. At this time, Wei Qingyuan's surprised gaze fell on Hashi. He said after a long while, So you are Shiyu? Chapter 1066. Already left. Wei Qingyuan was stunned for a moment. Then his baby face collapsed as he said depressingly, Well, I even boast of my mutated dual sky spiritual root in front of you. I didn't expect that you actually have a dual 5-element sky spiritual root. You're really too bad. When I was bragging just now, you must be laughing behind my back. Hashi was amused by this guy. As she was about to speak, she saw Tongbing's tearful appearance, and she suddenly reacted. Only one foundation establishment stage passed the screening, which naturally meant that Tongbing had failed. Realizing that Hashi was watching him, Tongbing smiled reluctantly and said, Mr. Shiyu, you are so amazing. I didn't expect you to be a dual sky spiritual root. No wonder you can pass the screening. I actually know that I can't pass the assessment, but I just want to try it. But sure enough, it is impossible for someone like me to enter Miracle Healer Academy. What Hashi was not good at comforting people. She just said indifferently, "Your spiritual power fluctuations are full of peaceful vitality, so you are a very suitable person to become a doctor. You failed this year, but you can wait next year or the year after. As long as you break through to the meridian stage, your chances of passing the assessment will increase a lot. There is no need to rush for quick success." Tong Bing's eyes were red, and he nodded quickly. He said softly, Then I will return the inscribed jade slip first. "Sorry, Brother Wei, I wasted your recommendation letter." Wei Qingyuan interrupted him nonchalantly. "It's just a piece of torn paper. It's nothing. What's more, now that you registered once, you can participate directly in the future, which is not a waste. You are I right?" Tong Bing bit his lip, bowed to Hushi and Wei Qingyuan again, said thank you in a low voice, then he turned and ran toward the hut. The end of the spiritual root test meant that the first day of assessment was also over. Hushi originally planned to wait for Tong Bing to leave the examination room together. After all, Hu Minghui and his son were still nearby. The mysterious Wei Qingyuan, whose intention was unclear, stayed with Hushi. However, half an hour passed. The martial artists who returned the inscribed jade slips all came out one after another and left, but Tong Bing never showed up. Even in the end, the people on the square were almost gone, and the academy was preparing to cover the square with enchantment again. But Hushi never saw Tong Bing. The boy in green clothes came out from the hut. Seeing that Hushi and Wei Qingyuan had not left, he came over in surprise. "The first day of assessment is over, you can leave." Hushi frowned, but she still asked about Tong Bing's whereabouts. The boy in green clothes said, "It turns out that you are the friends of that little guy. A teacher in the college asked him to help with some chores. He has already left after he finished them. He actually asked a manservant to notify you, but I guess that manservant has forgotten it." With that, the boy in green clothes frowned and complained, "These people are really getting less and less focused. Sorry for letting you wait for so long." Hushi shook her head, smiled faintly, and bowed to the boy in green clothes before leaving. Wei Qingyuan raised his eyebrows, glanced at the boy in green clothes meaningfully, and left as well. He kept up with Hushi's pace and yelled, "You don't go so fast. Where do you live? How about I move to stay in the same inn as you for these few days?" Chapter 1067. Not human in the hut. The old man in charge of testing the spiritual root raised his head, and his sleepy eyes flickered at this moment. How? Did those people have any doubt? The boy in green clothes thought for a moment before he said, "Shouldn't be. I can see that they are just getting acquainted with that Tong Bing, and they don't have a deep friendship. They are just asking out of friendship. As for that Wei Qingyuan, I don't know who is this person, but I always feel that he is not simple." The old man shook his head and said, "Don't worry about him, as long as they don't doubt it. You can take those people in the hut back first." As he said, he smiled, showing the deep wrinkles on his face. "This year's harvest seems to be pretty good. This is already the third one. Now the above should be satisfied." Hushi, who walked out of the square, suddenly turned his head, looking deep into the direction of the square. There was gradually being enveloped by a barrier, and the air was like a layer of mist, making people no longer able to see the scene inside. Bai Hu, Qing Wan and Gu Lufeng, who were waiting outside, all ran over at this time, and they asked about Hushi's assessment results. After asking for a long time and seeing Hushi didn't speak, Bai Hu couldn't help but nervously say, "Young master, what's the matter? Didn't you pass the first round of assessment?" "Ahem. That's fine, let's think of another way." Wei Qingyuan on the side was looking up at the martial artists of the 3 gold core stages. It was clear that Yu's cultivation base was so much lower than them, but they were so submissive to her. TSK, Yu really isn't simple. Hearing Bai Hu's words, Wei Qingyuan couldn't help but sigh. Don't worry about it, Yu is the only foundation establishment stage martial artist who passed the first round of assessment. Bai Hu breathed a sigh of relief when he heard the words. Yeah, make impossible possible. This is the style of princess. However, Bai Hu turned his eyes on Wei Qingyuan with hostility. Who are you? Who is this? Why is he so close to princess? Wei Qingyuan laughed, did not answer Bai Hu's words, but looked at Hushi. Shiyu, then we will see you in the second assessment? Hope there is a chance to become your classmate. After speaking, Wei Chengyuan left without waiting for Baihu to speak. Baihu let out a tisk. Looking at his handsome back, he couldn't help but roast. Flower peacock. Gu Lufeng asked Hushi in a low voice. Shiyu, what's wrong? Nothing. Hushi shook her head, then she said something that didn't make sense. Tongbing was not selected. After that, she stopped looking in the direction of the square before walking toward the Wangyue pavilion. Gu Lufeng, who was left behind, frowned slightly. What did Shiyu mean? Baihu regretfully shook his head and said, Tongbing really did not pass the screening. But this is normal. He is only at the foundation establishment stage. If things happen, he will be killed in the assessment. It would be better to train for a few years before trying. Gu Lufeng smiled and said, What is foundation establishment stage? Don't forget, our Shiyu is also the foundation establishment stage. Baihu suddenly said exaggeratedly, Can she be compared? Our princess is not a human being. She is the devil herself. Comparing her to ordinary people, isn't it a joke? Gu Lufeng was choked by Baihu's words, then he looked at Hushi and couldn't help but sigh. Is Shiyu really only at the foundation establishment stage? Chapter 1068. Student Council. But at this time, a building to the south was still brightly lit, and occasionally indistinct figures were walking around. This was the area where the Miracle Healer Academy's Student Council was located. The Academy was an organization completely managed by the students of Miracle Healer Academy. It had great power in the Miracle Healer Academy, and it was also a bridge for the reconciliation of contradictions and connections between the Academy and the students. This time the Miracle Healer Academy entrance assessment, except for the teachers who were specifically responsible for the assessment and supervision, other related matters were all taken care of by the Student Council. On the top floor of the building where the Student Council was located, there was a private room that belonged to the president, vice presidents, and the key members of the Student Council. The decoration inside was elegant and luxurious. At this time, the sky was dim, but the crystal stone shone in the room, which reflected the antique style of the painted wall. At this time, two women were sitting in this elegant room. If Hushi were here, she would be able to recognize these two acquaintances, Lu Jishi and Ren Shuling, who had become enemies with her in Yangon City. At this time, Ren Shuling was burning a recording talisman, watching the handsome figure of a young man in the talisman with flushing cheeks. However, Lu Jishi was staring at a medicinal pill, as if there was a depression and sorrow that couldn't be solved. Suddenly, the door gently pushed open, and a tall young man strode in. This man seemed to be only 18 years old. He had handsome facial features, a pair of sword eyebrows and deep and shining eyes. It could be seen that he was a determined teenager. As soon as Ren Shuling saw the man entering, she immediately put away the recording talisman she was watching, but her eyes were shy of joy. Brother Kaiyu, why are you here? Kaiyu was the vice president of the Student Council, and the top in the entrance assessment 5 years ago. He became the vice president in these 5 years. Kaiyu gently touched Ren Shuling's head, looking at her as if he was looking at a naughty little sister. What does Shuling mean? Can't I come? Ren Shuling blushed and lowered her head shyly, saying like a mosquito, No, I'm happy that you are here. However, Kaiyu did not hear her. Instead, she walked to Lu Jishi's side a few steps, and his voice was unconsciously low and soft. Jishi, this is the list of participants who participated in the Miracle Healer Academy assessment this time, and their corresponding examiners. If there are no problems, I will submit the list to the elders. The formal assessment will be carried out the day after tomorrow. All students participating in the assessment of Miracle Healer Academy would be assigned with an examiner during the evaluation period. These examiners were sometimes teachers of the academy, and sometimes key members of the Student Council. This year, it happened to be the Student Councils to supervise the assessment. Therefore, how much power did the Student Council have that allowed them to supervise the assessment? Lu Jishi recovered, put the medicinal pill into the storage device, smiled and took the list from Kaiyu. Kaiyu stood aside. staring blankly at the beautiful face of the young girl. His handsome face flushed slightly. Chapter 1069. Is there any problem? Caillou's heart was pounding. His eyes were full of infatuation and inferiority complex. Before entering Miracle Healer Academy, Caillou always felt that he had an awe-inspiring innate talent, and he was superior. However, since he met Lu Jishi, he had never had the pride he once had. Their president was really good, so good that he felt ashamed. He couldn't wait to give the best in the world to her. Lu Jishi didn't notice Caillou's thoughts. She just carefully looked at the information of everyone on the list. Miss Han Qianer of Shuiyu sect, Feng Yinqin of Feng family, Xia Qian of Qixing Palace. These were all famous among the students who applied for this year's assessment, but Lu Jishi wasn't moved at all. Caillou didn't pay attention to these boys and girls at all. In Caillou's mind, these geniuses praised by outsiders could not be compared with his president. However, Lu Jishi, whose expression had been calm, suddenly looked shocked when seeing the last name on the list. She couldn't help exclaiming, "Xiyu? Why is he here?" Caillou suddenly woke up from the confusion of peeping at Lu Jishi, and he stepped forward and said, "What's wrong? Is there anything wrong?" He was about to take the inscribed jade slip in Lu Jishi's hand and take a look, but Ren Shuling moved faster than him. When her divine sense probed into the inscribed jade slip and saw the name and introduction of Xiyu, as well as the introduction of the water and fire dual sky spiritual root, she suddenly said furiously, "This bitch dares to come here. She even dares to take the assessment?" Seeing Lu Jishi's unsightly expression, Caillou quickly asked, "Jishi, what's wrong? Is there anything wrong with this Xiyu?" Lu Jishi bit her lower lip and shook her head eagerly. "No, just happened to know him. How could this be fine?" Before Lu Jishi finished speaking, she was interrupted by Ren Shuling, who was anxious on the side. "Brother Caillou, I tell you, this bitch named Xiyu is simply too much. In Yangon City, she not only provoked and bullied senior sister, used her name to hype up her own reputation, and she even used despicable means to grab the credit of senior sister. She made everyone in Yangon City laugh at me and senior sister. When I think of this bitch, I'm still so angry that I can't fall asleep." When Caillou heard Ren Shuling's words, his face suddenly turned gloomy, and the aura of the peak of gold core stage on his body naturally spread out. "What is going on? Can you tell me clearly? Someone dared to bully Jishi and rob her of her credit? He is simply tired of living." Ren Shuling immediately talked about what happened in Yangon City with some additional untrue facts. The more she said, the more Caillou's face became gloomy. The coldness in his eyes even made Ren Shuling feel scared. However, even though Ren Shuling was a little afraid of the strange brother Caillou, she had more resentment toward Xiyu. She kept cursing her nonstop. "That's it. The bitch Xiyu used despicable means to disturb the mind of senior sister, and she even stole senior sister's treatment plan. In the end, she even snatched senior sister's credit and the divine soul jade. It's a pity that senior sister and I just wanted to help with goodwill, but Xiyu made us be hated by the people of the Yangon City." Chapter 1070. What's wrong? Caillou's fists on both sides of his body were clenched tight. He said with a chilling tone, "How is it just hateful? He simply deserves death." Lu Jishi shook her head and said in disapproval, "Shuling, don't talk nonsense. Mr. Shi just did what he thought was right. At least on the surface, we couldn't pick out any mistakes in his behavior." As she set her eyes on Caillou and whispered lonely, "Caillou, don't listen to Shuling's nonsense. It's all a misunderstanding. Maybe I'm really inferior to others. Okay, there is no problem on this list. Do you need me to report to the elders now?" Ren Shuling saw that Lu Jishi had spoken up for Xiyu in this way. She protested furiously. "Sister, are you stupid? How can you just let him go? You kindly let him go, but did he let you go in Yangon City? What's more, if he passes the examination, who knows how will he slander you in this academy? Besides, did you forget? The bitch Xiyu was obviously shameless, and he even made a blacklist for Shengda Hall, so that those people turn against our doctors association. How can we let such a cruel person step into the Miracle Healer Academy? I'll go to Elder Wang and ask him to kick this Shiyu out of the assessment list. A person like him wants to get into the Miracle Healer Academy? Simply dreaming. Xueling, come back. Lu Jishi said solemnly. This list has already been announced on the square. If you ask someone to remove Shiyu's name on the list, what would the other martial artists who participated in the assessment think? Our student council is the most fair and strict organization in the academy. How can we use our power for private revenge? Okay, this matter ends here. With that, she stood up and took the list in Ren Shuiling's hand. However, Kaiyu moved faster than her, grabbing the inscribed jade slip, and smiled gently. Jishi, I suddenly remembered that there are some things wrong with this list. Let me amend it before letting you review. Lu Jishi's eyes flashed, and her voice was gentle and soft. What's wrong? Kaiyu's voice couldn't help but soften a bit as if he was afraid of polluting her. No, I just think I haven't participated in the invigilation for a long time, so I will replace Zhang Chong with me this time. Ren Shuiling immediately clapped his hands and laughed. Brother Kaiyu is really smart. Yes, instead of removing his name, it is better to let that bitch suffer in the assessment. Anyway, the casualty rate is high in every year assessment. He only has the foundation establishment stage. He will definitely suffer by then. Ha ha ha. Lu Jishi was in hesitation. Her face was full of disapproval and intolerance. Kaiyu quickly interrupted her and laughed. Jishi, don't worry about it. I will take care of this. There are some dirty people and things that are not understandable by a kind-hearted person like Jishi. But you can rest assured, I will never let them hurt you again. After speaking, he patted the excited Ren Shuiling's head and walked out of the private room. Ren Shuiling was so excited. She couldn't wait to know the end of Shiyu. With that thought in mind, she also followed out. Chapter 1071. Should I count interest? When only Lu Jishi was left in the elegant room, she sneered slightly, and a strange light flashed in her eyes. But the change in expression was only a moment, and soon her face was covered with a slight sadness and loneliness. After Kaiyu left the private room, he was about to close the door. When he turned around and saw Lu Jishi's sad and lonely expression through the door, he suddenly felt sorry for her. Our president has always been a godlike existence. In the entire Miracle Healer Academy, no one dares to disrespect and no one doesn't admire her. Unexpectedly, she was bullied by a guy from the foundation establishment stage. No wonder Lu Jishi has been depressed since she came back last time. The gentle and noble smile that had always been on her face has disappeared. It turned out that she was wronged like that outside. When Kaiyu thought of this, he couldn't help clenching his fists. I'm really useless. Never mind if I'm not as outstanding as our president, knowing that our president is so kind and gentle. But I can't even protect her from being harmed. What is the meaning of me being the vice president? Shiyu? Since you dare to bully our president, no matter who you are, I will teach you a bloody lesson. The third day was the real first round of the Miracle Healer Academy entrance assessment. Hushi arrived at the assessment square early, but even though she came here early, she found that almost 100 martial artists who passed the spiritual root test were waiting here early. As soon as Wei Qingyuan saw Hushi, he leaned in very naturally and put his arm around her shoulder. Xiaoyuer, how do you feel? The formal assessment will begin today. You won't be nervous and didn't sleep last night, right? Hushi stretched out her hand and flicked away his arm lightly. She didn't seem to do anything, but Wei Qingyuan felt his arm numb. He screamed and backed a few steps. Wei Qingyuan said with a bitter face, Brother, we have faced difficulties together the day before yesterday. You don't have to be cruel to brother, right? Hushi sneered and said, I don't know if we have faced difficulties together, but I remember clearly that you stole elixir from me. Thank you, 9 superb meridian cleansing pills, 900,000 crystals. Wei Qingyuan's face was stiff. His arm that was about to put around Hushi's shoulder was kept back after hearing Hushi's cold words. You have owed me 900,000 crystals for 2 days. Should I count interest as well? Wei Qingyuan completely wilted. He ran far away from her with a sullen expression. The resentment he felt was evident. But he didn't dare to get close to Hushi again, for fear that this beautiful young boy would settle accounts with him again. He obviously runs Shengda Hall. All the best quality pills belong to him. Can't you just give a few to me? Do you need to be so stingy? Wei Chengyuan neglected selectively at this time. He had tens of thousands of crystal stones in his family. 900,000 crystals were less than a fraction. But he was stingy that he didn't want to pay the money. Soon the first round of assessment was about to begin. Before that, a thin elder walked to the square and said some meaningless nonsense. The content was nothing more than promoting the academy mission of the Miracle Healer Academy and emphasizing fairness and justice in assessments. What shocked Hushi was that this elder, who seemed to be smiling but lazy, turned out to be a master of the nascent soul later stage. Chapter 1072. Disbelief. Any elder of the Miracle Healer Academy is at the nascent soul stage level. It really deserves to be the most mysterious and most sought-after place in the Miluo continent. After the elder's nonsense was finished, the boy in green clothes who appeared yesterday came forward, cleared his throat and said, "The first round of assessment will be completed by a martial artist and an invigilator. Now I will announce an invigilator for everyone present. The first invigilator, Caillou." As soon as the boy in green clothes finished reading, a handsome and upright young man came up from the hazy enchantment behind. As soon as this person appeared, the whole venue suddenly boiled up. "Caillou. I didn't expect it to be Vice President Caillou." Vice President Caillou was at the top of the freshman assessment 5 years ago. After entering the academy, he participated in the first major competition and got top 5 results. He became the vice president of the Academy Student Council in just 3 years. Even in Miracle Healer Academy, he is a legend that everyone pursues. I heard that President Caillou has not been an invigilator for several years. I didn't expect him to come this year. Oh, who do you think will become Vice President Caillou's examinee? If it was me, I will be so happy that I would faint. The boy in green clothes looked at Caillou with admiration and envy. Then he looked at the examinees and said in a deep voice, "The examinee that Caillou is supervising is Shiyu." As soon as the boy in green clothes finished speaking, almost everyone turned their eyes on Hushi, with jealousy, envy, disdain, and resentment in their eyes. There were only 100 people here, and the only foundation establishment stage was Hushi. What's more, Hushi's appearance was so outstanding and her identity was very special. Of course, no one of the examinees present did not know him. Someone couldn't help but sighed. How could it be Shiyu? He is just a waste at the foundation establishment stage. He may not even pass the first level. Let Vice President Caillou supervise him is just an insult to him. Hushi didn't care about everyone's comments. She walked forward slowly and handed the inscribed jade slip to Caillou. Caillou didn't find Shiyu in the crowd at the beginning. After all, the pictures recorded in the inscribed jade slip were not clear. He was extremely disgusted with this person in his heart, and he was not interested in taking a second look at her at all. But when Shiyu walked out of the crowd, he realized that this was a teenager with a better appearance than Lu Jishi. The bright phoenix eyes were calm, and the snow-white skin was shining in the sun. When the young man walked up slowly, everything behind him seemed to be a setting. The surrounding plants and wind seemed to stop, making people uncontrollable cast their eyes on him. Caillou opened his eyes slightly and looked at this young man in disbelief. He was actually the cruel, sinister, and shameless bitch in Ren Shuoling's words. If he hadn't known the identity of this young man beforehand, he couldn't help but praise the young man's excellence. Not only because of the outstanding and peerless appearance of the young man, but also because of the loftiness radiated from the inside out on him. Miracle Healer Academy's position in Miluo continent was aloof. No matter how calm the examinees were, they would still feel nervous in their hearts. Just like the eldest lady of Shueyu sect not far away and Feng Yinqin of the Feng family. Each of them looked calm, but their eyes fluctuated slightly and their muscles were tense, which were all signs of tension. Chapter 1073. Written assessment. But the young man in front of him, his squinted phoenix eyes and calm expression, was like having a stroll in his own courtyard. He didn't have a sense of nervousness at all. However, the slight feeling of favor for this young man that had just aroused in Caillou's mind immediately turned into disgust when he thought of the harm he had caused to his president. He said coldly, "Come with me. I will take you to the first assessment room." Hushi raised her eyebrows slightly. There was a slight surprise in her mind. At that moment, she felt a trace of hostility from this person, or even a killing intent with disgust. I have never seen him or met him before, right? Judging from Caillou's expression just now, he obviously doesn't know me either. Then this hostility is a bit interesting. Hushi's mouth twitched slightly, and she followed Caillou. The first assessment was in the academy, but because Hushi and others did not have the pass-inscribed jade slip, the academy opened up several special teleportation arrays to send these candidates to designated places to take the assessment. The way to activate the teleportation array was to use the inscribed jade slip in their hands. The light of the teleportation array flashed, and Hushi quickly entered a huge room. But this room was very strange. The entire room was divided into more than 100 small rooms. Each room was separated by a transparent spiritual power shield. There was only one table and 2 chairs in the small room. Hushi sat down at the table. Soon, she felt Caillou's cold aura behind her as well as the cold eyes staring at her back. But what kind of person was Hushi? Not to mention her profession, which was good at disguising. In her previous life, with her strong mental ability, she was accustomed to being watched in this Miluo continent. Caillou's hostile gaze did not bother her at all. After Hushi sat down, she realized that when she looked up, she could see other candidates appearing in the rooms one after another, and she could faintly hear their voices. When she looked at the table, the surrounding scenes turned blur. So these spiritual power shield is to prevent cheating? They are really advanced. However, to prevent cheating? Does that mean that this time the first level assessment of Miracle Healer Academy is a written test? The things that happened next quickly confirmed Hushi's guess. An old man in his early 50s, wearing a light blue gown and a scholar hat, appeared. His eyes exuded a feeling of spring breeze. As soon as the old man appeared, the noisy examinees in the room all quieted down. Hushi frowned again. It's another nascent soul stage? How many mentors or elders of nascent soul stage are there in Miracle Healer Academy? At this ratio, even if all the nascent soul stage masters of every family and sect in the Miluo continent add up, it is still less than the nascent soul stage master here, right? The old man smiled slightly. His deep voice filled the rooms. I'm the chief invigilator for the first round of the entrance assessment of the Miracle Healer Academy. Now I will announce that the content of the first round assessment is the written assessment. As soon as this statement was made, everyone present couldn't help but widen their eyes. Some were surprised, some panicked, and some were astonished. Hushi heard a young boy not far away said in joy. The first round is actually a written assessment. The entrance assessment of Miracle Healer Academy has had the written assessment for 2 years. Our luck is really great. Chapter 1074. The start of assessment. Idiot. The other young man beside couldn't help but glare at him. He said annoyingly, "Do you think it's easy to pass the written assessment? Do you think you are very fortunate?" "Why, it isn't." The young man was unconvinced. "At least the written assessment is safe. Do you know that the first round of written assessment usually eliminates 10% or even 20% more people than other assessments? When you are eliminated, let's see if you still feel fortunate." As soon as he said this, the young man suddenly fell silent with a face full of sorrow. They looked back and forth. Many people wanted to cheat, but when they looked at the invigilator sitting behind them, they immediately kept away that little thought. If they failed the exam, at least there would be a chance next year. But if the invigilator found that they had bad conduct, then they wouldn't have a chance to step into the Miracle Healer Academy in their lives. Even those who behave excessively would even be rejected by all major sects and families of Miluo continent. The chief invigilator in front seemed to have not heard the murmurs of the people below, and he smiled slightly. The content of the written assessment includes 30% of physician-related questions and 70% of other related questions. The assessment time is 1 hour. The total number of questions is 1,000. Those who can answer more than 500 correctly will be included in the candidate list for the second assessment. The rest will be eliminated. You must not cheat during the answering process. You must not leave the room early. You must not interfere with other people's answers. Offenders, you won't want to know the result. Now the assessment begins. As soon as the invigilator spoke, he flicked his sleeve. She only felt a blur in front, and there was already a sheet of fluorescent paper in front of her. There was also a pen next to the paper. Of course, it was not a brush, but a hard pen unique to Milieu continent, which was much more convenient to use than a brush. It was just that for many examinees present, they felt extremely strange when they picked up this pen. It was true that these people had long been accustomed to drawing and writing with inscribed jade slip, so they had forgotten what it was like to hold a pen when they were young. She picked up the slender pen, turned a beautiful pen on the tip of her finger, and couldn't help smiling slightly. Originally, she only entered Miracle Healer Academy with a certain purpose, but now it seemed that this academy was much more interesting than she thought. The invigilator quickly announced the start of the written assessment. She activated the special paper on the desk with spiritual power and began to answer the questions. The whole examination room fell into silence. Everyone's attention was focused on the answer sheet. Caillou, who was behind Shiyu, his expression gradually changed from cold disgust to shock. The young man answered the question so fast, he almost wrote the answer after scanning the question. Compared to the examinees in other rooms who were thinking hard for the answer, Shiyu's expression was calm from beginning to end. The tip of the pen slid on the paper, making a rustling sound. After a while, she turned a page over. At this moment, Caillou couldn't sit still. He stood up, walked to Shiyu's side, and looked down. He never believed that Shiyu's speed was really that fast. If she continued at her speed, she could easily finish 1,000 questions within 2 hours. But is this possible? Caillou's first round of entrance assessment was also a written test. With his top results during that year, he only completed more than 700 questions in the end. Chapter 1075. Depends on your luck. Even Lu Jishi, the highest record of Miracle Healer Academy's written assessment, only completed 862 questions in the end. How could this Shiyu complete 1/3 of the questions in just half an hour? But looking at his sloppy appearance, he must have answered blindly. Caillou snorted coldly, watching attentively, but the more he watched, the more frightened he was. Only a moment later, Shiyu had already answered a dozen more questions on the new page. And these questions were almost all correct. It was almost because Caillou himself wasn't certain about a few questions, but he somehow felt extremely reasonable about Shiyu's answers. He even felt like he was enlightened. Seeing Shiyu's swiftly writing pen and his delicate side face, Caillou was shocked. This young man, who is he? Caillou's behaviors naturally attracted the attention of the chief invigilator. He glanced at Caillou with inquiry, and was about to walk over. Caillou panicked, shook his head quickly and sat down on his position. The invigilator didn't think too much. The assessment was still going on in an orderly manner. Hushi, who was concentrating on the test paper, couldn't help but raise her eyebrows and peek at Caillou behind her thoughtfully. 2 hours passed quickly, and the test papers of all examinees would be recorded and handed in by the invigilators. After the information was entered into the examination papers, all examination papers would be sealed. It was no longer possible to see which examination paper was answered by which student. The sealed information would not be revealed until all examination papers had been marked. Caillou took Shiyu's examination paper and walked toward the chief invigilator. Another member of the Academy Student Council came out with him. Seeing him shaking his head impatiently, Caillou couldn't help but smile. "Zhang Chong, why do you look so unwilling?" Zhang Chong sighed and said with disgust, "The person I invigilated is really too disgusting. He kept showing off that he is a 4th-level doctor, or someone from the royal family of the Haoyue kingdom. Pui, with that pig brain? Even from the royal family?" As a result, he couldn't even answer the most basic medical questions. Caillou originally wanted to tease him a few more words when he heard the words, But suddenly his heart moved, and a faint light flashed in his eyes. When the two turned around the corner, and were about to enter the room where the chief invigilator was, Caillou suddenly struck Zhang Chong unsteadily. For some reason, Zhang Chong felt his hands numb, and the test paper he was holding fell to the ground. Not only was his hand numb, but he also felt a little dizzy, wondering if he was agitated by the disgusting examinee. Caillou held him, handed him the test paper, and smiled. "Be careful, if you lose the test paper, I will kick you out of the Academy Student Council." Zhang Chong laughed, took the exam paper, and walked into the room without much thought. Caillou gently squeezed the test paper in his hand behind him. His eyes looked gloomy. "Shiyu, even if you are talented? People like you who are bad conduct and vicious are not qualified to stay in Miracle Healer Academy. Whether you can pass this first round of assessment in the end depends on your luck." Thinking of this, he sneered and quickly ran toward the main invigilator's room. The results of the first round of written assessment were still announced on the square, where the spiritual root was tested yesterday. At this time, the scorching sun was in the sky, but 98 examinees and their companions were eagerly waiting on the square. None of them leave early. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.